Go through some export settings so you get a good idea of what you're looking at. I'm going to just go down the list. Format. The format of file that you're going to export. Most of these are video, but to be used in different situations. H.264, I believe, is the most common, or QuickTime for high quality video. These are your presets. If you don't want to go through all the settings, for example, what are the best settings for YouTube 1080p video? We can just click there. We can add comments for the metadata, the name of the file you're exporting. Do you want to export video and audio? Here's a summary of all the settings and a summary of the source video. In the basic video settings, we have width and height. In the basic video settings, we have pixel dimension here. We can change the frame rate of the export, but usually you're going to want to change the frame rate in the sequence settings and have it match here. The aspect ratio for internet deliveries is generally square pixels, but you may need something different if you're exporting to a tape or for a specific client who needs something for TV. If you want to render at maximum depth, you can click here. The only time I use this is when I'm having export problems and I want the maximum quality I can get. The encoder settings, hardware versus software encoding, I always leave on the default, but the difference is relying on your hardware to do the exporting, which is generally what we want to do. Or if you do software encoding, you're trying to make the whole computer system do the calculations rather than making use of your graphics card. Mastering display color volume stays the same. Content light levels is giving you extra information. Bitrate settings. Here there's a constant bitrate, variable bitrate 1 pass, or variable bitrate 2 pass. What are those differences? A constant bitrate is saying how much compression you want on every single frame. With a lot of different colors, it's going to take the same amount of information. Then for very simple frames, for example, a pure white screen, it makes sense that a pure white screen should take less information in order to display correctly and would be a waste of data to describe every single pixel color. So that's what variable bitrate means. On these simple frames, it takes less data, and on more complicated frames, it takes more data. If you do it 1 pass, the computer approximates and guesses what percentage of data to put on each frame based on its complexity. Variable bitrate 2 pass means that first, the computer goes through the entire video and looks at every frame in order to decide where the complex frames are and where the simple ones are. Then it goes back through the whole video again and does the actual export itself, calculating the correct percentage of compression it needs on the simple frames and the more complicated ones. You can say you want a target bit rate of 10, for example, but the maximum bit rate to be 16 on really complicated frames. This will translate to file size. If you have a very low target bit rate, the file size will go down. We can see estimated file size 5 megabytes versus if I have it here, it's 19 megabytes. In this scenario, the target bit rate will be 10, and on the most complicated frame, it will go up to 16, but probably on very simple frames, it could go much lower. But on average, it will stay right at 10. In the advanced settings, we have keyframe distance. If you want to build in some keyframes into the metadata, or if you have virtual reality video that needs extra metadata, you can click that here. In the other tabs, we have effects to apply effects to your export. Most of these I like to do inside the sequence itself rather than just on the export, but you could apply a different look just for this one export, or change the brightness, or have some kind of a watermark on top of the entire video. You could use this if you're putting a watermark on top of your video, if you're showing a sample to a client you don't trust. You may need to see the name of the file or the sequence for that particular export, the time code for producers who are giving you notes, or other effects on top of your video. I almost never change the audio format settings unless I have a specific request. The audio hertz don't change the file size very much, so I usually leave it at maximum. And the audio quality and bitrate the same. The multiplexer is a different way to change the file type you're exporting, and you can choose here in captions to include or not include your captions or subtitles. And in publish, you can publish straight to one of these locations instead of uploading later. For example, straight to YouTube. You'll sign in here, select the channel, the playlist, the title, so you can go straight out of Premiere, straight into YouTube. That may be very convenient. Use maximum render quality. That increases the time to export, but looks a little bit better. Import into project. If you want the export to display in your project window once it's done. If you want to make sure that your metadata timecode starts at 0, you can select here. If you want to use previews or proxies, instead of the full resolution video, you can check those here. And if you want to render the alpha channel only, if you have some specific graphics that you're rendering, you can check that here. If you're including footage that you're exporting that's been slowed down or sped up, you can specify here frame sampling, frame blending, or optical flow is the way to handle those extra frames that have been added into your footage so that it flows smoothly. Each one of these has different looks, so you should probably experiment. And then here in metadata, you can add additional or subtract additional information to be included in the metadata. If you click Q, your export will go to Adobe Media Encoder, or export, it exports right here in Premiere. And cancel, that's it.